Yeah, pretty much. Let's do it. All right, folks. Hey, my name's Kyle. Here at WP Roundtable, episode 112. Special guest, Russell Aaron. So excited to have you here with me tonight, my friend. How are you doing?
I am good. How are you doing? I love that your thing says lead guitar, by the way. Like, I don't know if you know this about me, but I have a guitar on my wrist. I have a Gibson Les Paul, so I think that's awesome.
You're going to have to play rhythm for this episode.
I'm the rhythm player. I've never been a lead guy.
I'm not a very functional lead guitarist.
My hands don't go down that far on the fretboard is all I'm saying. Like,
yeah. That's crazy. Awesome. Yeah, well, maybe we'll just riff for the next hour instead of talking WordPress.
We could just do a really long Meatloaf's I'll do anything for love.
Perfect. I'm in. So, Russell Aaron, you're employed at WebDev Studios, do a lot of cool stuff. You've got a cool background. You're involved in the Las Vegas WordPress community, and you've been a plugin developer for a while. You've done a lot of things in this space, and I can't honestly recall if we have had in-person conversations before. We've been at the same WordCamp once or twice, but
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of lose track, and I feel like I should remember that. I've seen you, and you've been on my list. I gotta go meet that Russ guy.
It's one of those things where you're like, okay, I'm gonna go to WordCamp and I'm gonna do this, and then you get sidetracked in hallway camp, or you get sidetracked to go and do this, and then you're like, well, I never got to meet this person. So
you know what it's like. Yeah,
I totally know what it's like.
I go to an event like WordCamp US or something like that, and my list is so long.
I was friends with Shada Toriabi for the longest time on Twitter, and we've been to different camps, but I never met her. And so she finally came to Vegas for Prestige Conf, and she's like, "We're meeting, no questions asked, right here." Like, we had to do that, or else it was never going to happen. And that happens to be one of my favorite WP Roundtable episodes, by the way, with Shada Toriabi.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
That was an episode, I think, that I was sick and missed.
Fair enough.
Which has happened once in 112 episodes.
Right on.
Anyway, down to business. We got a lot of stuff to talk about, my friend.
All right.
And I want to learn so much about you, and so does the world. So before we dive into your background and all the cool things you're involved in, we're going to touch on our quick picks of the week real fast.
Okay.
I don't know if I forewarned you on this brief, but exciting and treasured segment in the show. My quick pick of the week is just a little article written by another regular panelist on the show who was a little bit busy this evening, Mark Benzakein. He wrote Competition, Crisis Management, and the Community. I thought it was a very nice article. He wrote it on the serverpress.com blog. Serverpress is Mark's company, or he's a partner in that business. And he wrote just a nice article. I'm going to share the link here on the Google event page, and I encourage everybody to read it. It was something that he talks a little bit about some new competition in the space. Pressmatic is a new program that they're keeping an eye on, and it's kind of doing some different things. Does sort of compete with Desktop Server, which is Mark's software. But he had a lot of interesting things to say that I thought were very nice. Mark is a great person and is definitely not the kind of person to bash on a competitor. He's an inspiration to all of us about how to really be a good lead by example and just be a great representative of the community. So I encourage you to read it.
I met Mark at Orange County this year, and we had a nice, lengthy conversation about different things. And I can definitely vouch that he is not one guy to just go and say, bad things about a company. But I do know that he's very thorough on the things that he does dive into.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Mark's awesome. He's a good friend, and I have so much respect for him. I wish he could have been here with us tonight. Actually, we're going to have to probably adjust the airtime of our show in future episodes so that he can join us more frequently. But anyway.
Should you and I just pause, and then he can just come in and like fill in some audio like randomly? We can just dub him in.
We could dub Mark in. That'd be perfect. Yeah, I'll just Slack him right now. Russ, do you have a quick pick to share with us?
I do. So mine is from WPBeginner.com, and it's actual 7 best WordPress backup plugins, compared pros and cons. I think said Balky or Syed Balki is an amazing writer. And simply, I don't care which plugin backup you use. They're all amazing. They all have pros and they all have cons, but I want people to make backups. Backups are very important. When you go to different WordCamps, Kyle, I'm sure you can attest to this. You meet people and they're like, no, I don't have a backup. It's like, why don't you have a backup? That should be the first thing you do. So I encourage people to go read the pros and cons between these 7 backup plugins. And I'm sure now there's at least 30 different backup plugins. Your host might even make a backup, so check with them. But I encourage people to always make a backup before you take my advice, because I don't want people tweeting me saying, your advice broke my site. Like, make a backup first.
And they're coming after you.
Oh, yeah, man.
We need those attorney disclaimers. This does not constitute web development advice.
Yeah, it's a little thing at the bottom that says, like, no motorcycles after 3 p.m., blah, blah, blah. Like, that's pretty funny. So that's my little tip.
Awesome. That's a good one. Thanks. A great article. WP Beginner, as always. Excellent resource. Everybody read that and take it to heart and share. Spread the good news of backups to everyone.
Oh, yes.
All right, Russ. Enough of that nonsense. Let's talk about you. I want to know a little bit about your background.
My favorite subject.
Yeah. Mine too. What a great coincidence.
Yeah, what a coincidence.
Yeah. So tell me, I want to know about you and how you've got here. So take us a little bit back to before your career really got on track, before you were doing awesome things with WordPress. And tell me a little bit about what you wanted to do with your career before it really got going.
Oh, dude. Okay. So this is a wicked story. So
that's why I asked.
Yeah. So I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to write articles, and I thought I was going to change the world. I was going to write that piece about, like freeing Tibet, and like, Tibet was going to be free. I thought I was going to do that. So first day, my freshman orientation, I'm sitting in school, and the head of the English department rolls in, and he goes, listen, if you're going to be a journalist, you got to do 3 things. He goes, you got to write a story and you got to tell the truth. You have to write for both sides of the story. You can't just be pro or con. You have to write for both sides. You can't be biased is what he's essentially saying. And he goes, number 3, you have to have a blog because no one's going to publish your stuff. And I said, how do you build a blog? And I was no longer interested in being a journalist. It was right there. So to make money through college, I was building like MySpace band layouts. Remember the old days of tables, and you could put everything into the About Me section and stuff like that. So I was great. Oh, I know. So I was building band MySpace layouts, but I was using the blog feature of my personal MySpace page. And I would, I'd be like, oh, I can't figure this out. And I was just like, doing short, quick little blurbs, not status updates, but actual blogs. And a buddy of mine says, hey, you should check out this thing. It's called WordPress.com. So he set me up a blog over there, and I was basically Mark Zuckerberging it. And what I mean by that is, like, I wasn't writing like long Chris Lemma blog posts. I was just writing like, oh, I can't figure out this important tag, or, stuff like that. But so that's how I got my feet into WordPress. And after I had, I think it was 50 or 60 blog posts over on WordPress.com, the same guy told me, did you know that you can have your own .com? You can install WordPress on it, and then you can start building your own stuff. And once he showed me that, I've been hooked on WordPress ever since. Mostly just staying up at night and reading as much as I could. I think I read everything on WP Candy up to their last post. And then that's when I found like WP Beginner, and then that's when I found like WP Tavern, stuff like that. I mean, I wish Post Status would have been around when I was just getting into things. I think I'd be much better because of it. But essentially, I just started building my own stuff, trial and error. I have this great story about the first thing I did was I hacked WP Login. So I changed wplogin.php to wp-rust.php. And I was like, look, it works. My login page is now, whatever, but it broke my site. because, core files are looking for login and not this. So I learned that, okay, let's go ahead and reinstall WordPress as a whole. And right then I learned that backups are more important than the actual work, because I had a backup of what I was doing. I could reinstall it, and right then and there, I was like, okay, backups are huge. So that's why I'm a big backups guy. But I started messing with my own stuff, breaking my own stuff, and then figuring some things out. I didn't just, show up one day and be like, hey, I can build you a site. Like I built my own stuff. I managed it. I maintained it for a long time. And essentially I got to a point where I was comfortable enough to say, I can actually take this to a mom and pop kind of shop and I can help them with a website, with a menu, things like that. So I started from there. I built my own stuff. I broke my own stuff because I'm the hardest critic on me. So once I get happy with it, then, I feel like other people could be happy with it. But so I started taking this thing, Kyle, where I would stay up at night and I would find a mom and pop bakery, or like a pizza place, or, like a small little, like an amazing Mexican food restaurant, but their website was still like built on Dreamweaver. And so I would stay up, for like 2 nights in a row, and I would rebuild their website and I'd put it on a local environment. Now, mind you, this was before desktop server.
Yeah.
Desktop server would have made this a lot easier, but I had like Zamp or Mamp or something installed. But so I used to show up to these people and I used to just say, hey, your new website could look like this, and I would say, like, give me $600 and you can have it like in an hour. And I started making a lot of business because of that, because you get a lot of people that are like, well, hire me and it's going to cost, 6 months to build this website, where, I just showed up on their doorstep and said, you can have this today, and it didn't go well a lot of the times, but I made a pretty successful living with it. Like I was paying my mortgage and stuff just by doing that, because I think a lot of people don't want to spend time or, 10 months building this new thing. Just let's get something up. It works. People can see our menu and here's how we get orders. And it was an easy way for me to make money, but I solved the problem because I recognized that a problem existed, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So from there, I met John Hawkins at a WordPress meetup, and I didn't know that meetups were a thing. Had no idea. I did not know about WordCamps. I did not know about Pressonomics or Prestige Comps. I didn't know about any of these things. And so I showed up, and John Hawkins talked about child theming, and it blew my mind. I was like, what is child theming? How do you do this? Like, this was in December of 2011. And so I went home and learned everything I could about child theming. And so I started going to these meetups. And eventually John was tired of being the only person speaking for 2 hours at these meetups. So I offered to help, and I would go home and I would learn one plugin, like the share this plugin. And I would come back and I'd say, here's how this plugin works, and here's what all these options did. And that got me into speaking and, setting things up, and eventually got me into running WordCamps. Now I've been running WordCamp Vegas for 2 years, which has been great. And now all this work has built up to me working for a big WordPress company such as WebDev Studios. So it's been a wild ride.
So for the past 3 months, you've been working for WebDev Studios in the maintain division.
The maintain division. Oh, that's a good band name. Kyle, that's going to be the name of our band when we jam out tonight. The maintain division. I love it.
Ah. See, these moments, they just come.
I know. Okay, it's three months in the maintain division.
Yeah. Leading up to this, what kind of things were you doing to keep yourself busy, pay the bills? Was it all just freelance work, or do you have any other projects that really occupied your time or got you involved in the community more?
So I used to work for a Las Vegas mortgage company, and so their site was built on WordPress. Their developer left. I showed up. I hacked their website. By hack, I mean I figured out their username and password. So their username was admin, and I essentially solved their password problem. And so they said, all right, you're hired. So I started working on a WordPress site that was built for mortgages, stuff like that. And I took their site from this very simple 2012 theme. No, they were on 2011, but I took it from that to where it is right now, which is, it's running complete custom stuff. It's not using too many plugins. Everything is essentially custom functionality. But so I started doing that. And while I was at the mortgage company, I would go to meetups. I started learning how to write plugins. I started helping people, solving their problems. And I started I decided to, if I'm going to get into WordPress, sorry, I have a phone call. Anyway, so if I'm really going to get into WordPress, I really probably should learn this stuff and not be the guy who shows up and just talks shit. You know what I mean? I used to be that guy, show up and be like, "Oh yeah, that plugin's crap," but I've never used that plugin. So, but I'd be that guy who sounds like he knows everything. Yeah, honestly. So I decided that then I was going to, all right, let me go and buy this plugin. Let me go buy Gravity Forms and see what I can do with it. Let me go pay for desktop server, not just use the 3 free sites. Let me actually put some money behind it and actually show people the real benefit of it. I decided to do that. And then when John Hawkins left the WordPress meetup group, in a sense of he just didn't want to be around. He wanted to have a break. He's been doing it for 7 years straight. Every month he wanted to have a break. So when I took over, I really decided to put my butt into gear and say, if I'm going to run this thing, I have to have the answers. Because people show up to meetup groups and they need help, and it's not fun when you show up and the organizer's like, well, I don't know. So I really decided that I was going to learn as much as I could while I could. And so I just started reading everything on Post Status or on WP Beginner, or on the Tavern, or just through Twitter, or just, it's like stupid little articles that were like, here's how you do this, even though you shouldn't do that. I was just reading articles because now I found a new way how not to hack the admin and stuff, I decided that I was really going to hone my skills and become a better role model. And so part of that was writing a plugin. So I wrote my first plugin. And then the second part of that was going to Orange County and getting into Plugin Palooza. I got into that. I took second place in that, which was kind of cool. And then the last step was actually, joining a WordPress company. I think that's the little cherry on top. Now I have more credibility than I ever have, because now all I do all day is WordPress. For the mortgage company, I was doing mortgage related WordPress, but now at Maintain, I'm doing everything WordPress.
So now that we're on it, give us a breakdown of what your day-to-day is and what you do for Maintain.
I'm basically a code monkey. No, so essentially what it is we have X amount of clients who they pay us a monthly retainer, and so we keep their sites back up. So I make sure that your sites or our client sites are being backed up every day. We set them up on security, so they're being secured. We make sure that there's no server errors, or there's no malware, stuff like that. And then we update plugins. We don't update every day, but we try to. So we're just always keeping people's sites up to date and making sure that they're running the latest, greatest. But for the most part, my day is essentially solving problems created by our clients. And not because they don't know, but it's essentially like, hey, I've been there, Kyle. I think you've been there as well. You hear about this plugin, you install it, you don't know better, so you install it on your live site, and then it ends up breaking something, and so it's like, help us fix it or help us go back. That's what most of my day is helping our clients find new ways to take their blog to the next level, but doing it correctly. That's the majority of my day.
So you go to the ticket queue every day and see what kind of fun you're in store for, and it could be anything.
I just keep it loaded on my phone at all time, and just anytime a notification comes in, I'm like, all right, let's see what it is. I learn something new every single day in support, and so I think it only makes me better. I think it's also challenging too, where it's like, well, I don't know this plugin. How am I going to help them? Well, all right, let's go learn it. And, then I start reading the source, or I start looking at how the plugin works, or reading support tickets. And I'm like, oh, this plugin's actually really cool.
Sweet. So give me a breakdown. What's a ticket that comes through that you're just like, oh, this one's mine. I'm claiming this one.
When they decide to give us money for no reason, yeah, that's my ticket. No, so for the most part, our tickets will be like, the majority of the work I'll say is like, there's something like with Genesis, and it's like, hey, we want to do, this new thing where we want to put breadcrumbs across all of our page. Those are definitely mine. That's a simple filter, or, that's like using a simple plugin, or something like, hey, I'll give you a good example. We had a client today, they're using social warfare, and they're using, so what social warfare does is it shows all of the Facebook links and Twitter and stuff like that, and it shows a count, like how many times this page has been shared across those social platforms.
Right.
Well, so on each post, it had the same thing twice. So it had 2 Facebook buttons, 2 Twitter buttons, and like, so what happened is they went in, and the theme has the manual code, and then they elected to turn on the hooks. So you have the manual code entering these things, and then you had a hook that said, before the content, add this, and after the content, add this. So it was showing up twice on the top and twice on the bottom. And I mean, it's a simple mistake that a lot of people make. If it's an option, people are going to play with it. So that was a ticket that it was very simple to fix, but it's like, all right, why is it doing this? How is it, and it was one of those things where it's like, oh, I get it. I understand what's going on.
Sure. Conversely, tell me about the kind of ticket that you just dread. Oh, somebody else take this, or I shouldn't have claimed this ticket.
I don't want to talk bad about anybody. So
just profile a ticket. Describe the conditions.
It's a ticket where the client doesn't know what their website does. They did not build it themselves. They do not speak to the developer, nor did the developer take down any notes whatsoever. There's no comments in the files that says, I got this code from WP Tavern or whatever. It just does something. Those are the kind of tickets that I dread, just because, like, we offer support, but it's not like, we're not going to take 6 weeks on a ticket. It's one of those things where we'll look at it, we'll give it, roughly an hour and a half. If we can't figure it out in an hour and a half, then that's when it starts getting into, you need to buy more hours for your support plan, something like that. It's one of those tickets where I want to help people. I want them to get the best support they can, but if they didn't know better and here's the situation they're in, I can help, but it is going to cost a little bit. And having that discussion, saying, please go and buy X amount of hours, that's always tough. It's always hard because I think a lot of people have WordPress sites and they're like, you could have this blog, but they don't actually understand that it's going to take quite a bit of money to get it to where you want it to be. Sure, there's free WordPress plugins and themes, and sure, there's tons of articles, but if you're trying to do something very specific, it's probably going to cost you a little bit of money to solve something or to build a new feature. And those are always the hardest conversations to have with clients.
You told me before that your day job gives you endless inspiration for potential WordCamp talks. There's problems that you see a lot of users having on a consistent basis, recurring problems or recurring just issues that confuse people, that cause big problems. Maybe give us, some your top 3, if you could.
Ooh, my top 3. Well, so I'm speaking at Ann Arbor, and it comes down to themes and about theme demonstrations. So I think my biggest one is going to be when you look at a theme like Jupyter or a theme like X. Those are both on Envato, which is okay. I'm not knocking Envato. That's going to be number 2, by the way. but so what I'm getting at is you build this theme and you're telling people like it's the number 1 theme It's, you know, it's easy to build, stuff like that, but they don't tell you specifically how it's built. You don't know if it's using Visual Composer. You don't know if it's all short codes or if it's widgets or if it's raw HTML. I think my biggest problem, and one thing that I see constantly, is our clients they'll be sold on this theme, and then they don't know how to put it together because, you know, there's no instructions, or the instructions simply say import this dummy file and then have fun. It doesn't say like, oh, set your homepage to homepage. It doesn't say anything like that. It just says, you know, import a demo file. So I think that's one of my biggest problems that I had about a month and a half ago, and that's why I started my work, or that's why I submitted my WordCamp talk to Ann Arbor, is because it's a big problem. A lot of people have no idea how things are being built, and it's because there are no standards, which is fine. I'm okay with that, but you know, when you buy a StudioPress Genesis theme, you know that the homepage is being built by widgets no matter what. Where when you go to this marketplace, or even on GitHub for that, when you find something, it doesn't say, hey, we're doing this. It just says install it and enjoy. You know, so that's number one. Number two comes down to I call them third and fourth party sites. So you have Envato, but then there's we were talking about this earlier. There's other sites, and I don't want to mention them because I don't want to promote their website on your show. But there's other sites where there's people and they're buying paid plugins like WooCommerce extensions, and they're stripping out all the code, and then they're selling them to this guy who's selling them to that guy who's selling them to people for like $7 a month. That comes across our platform at least once or twice a month, you know, where I understand you can't pay the $200 a year for Gravity Forms. That I understand, but you're actually paying more with this other site because you have to pay us to fix what they broke, when you could have just bought the plugin from Gravity Forms and saved yourself some money.
Sure.
That's number two. And then number three is essentially I don't want to sound bad, but it's too many chiefs and not enough Indians. So what happens is you get clients who come in, big clients, and you know there's 8 people who are making a decision, but they don't communicate with each other. So, you know, like the first person in charge says, we want to get rid of our blog. And the second person says they want to change all their blog links to green. And the third person wants to put featured images on all the blogs. And it's like, well, if you 3 communicate, we could do all that for you. But, you know, we get like 9 tickets from the same company in the same day. And it's like, are you guys really communicating with each other? Because we're getting mixed signals here. You know, those are my top 3.
Wow, those are great. Really interesting, and a couple, you know, definitely a couple that I wouldn't have even thought of myself.
I know.
On the first one in particular, I wonder what your commentary would be on where to point the finger here. What's at fault? Is this for the fault of users for having the audacity to think that they could put together sophisticated modern websites on their own without any skills? Is this the fault of the product makers for throwing together things with no regard for the user's experience or other standards in the industry? Is this the fault of the platform, WordPress not enforcing standards very strictly and working to make that experience more consistent for users? Or is it something else?
So I'm going to go with something else. So we're talking about the problem with WordPress theme demonstrations, right?
Sure, that onboarding experience where a user says, I see the demo, I'm just gonna, you know, buy this and then I'll have a beautiful site.
Okay, so I think the problem is sales. What I mean by that is that the word sales is very tricky. You know, like we've all seen the car dealerships where they have a car for $99.99 and then the dealer turns it and makes it $69.99 when the original price is really $69.99 to begin with. I think it comes down to something like that where, you know, I built this theme and I need to get it out there and I need to sell this. And I'm not knocking theme developers because if you do it right, you can make a lot of money. But the problem is that you're charging people for support, but you're not telling them what's involved. So basically you're saying the only way that we're going to help you is if you pay us more money on top of the money that it takes to buy the theme and license it every year. I think the problem becomes that I don't think anyone is going to steal your theme, or I don't think they're going to think less of your theme because, you know, the homepage is built on widgets and not built on shortcodes. I don't think anyone's going to think less. I think the problem becomes I'm not going to tell you and you have to buy to figure it out, you know, where that would never work if it came down to food. Like if I say, well, I have a peanut allergy. Are there peanuts in your hamburger? Well, I don't know. Buy my hamburger and find out. That would never fly. But it's okay in the WordPress space. You know what I mean? Like that's my problem, is that I have a question and I can't write that developer unless I tweet them, and clearly they're not going to answer anyway. There's no way to contact them until I pay a little bit of money. And by that point, it's almost too late, because trying to get a refund through Envato or through ThemeForest is really hard to do.
Do you think the pricing standards in the industry, especially for things like themes, contribute to this problem, being maybe too high for the consumer to, you know, purchase for experimental purposes, or too low for developers to make enough money, or for it to be worth investing in things like you've described? Do you think just the pricing point that we deal with in the WordPress space that users have come to expect, does that make the problem worse, or is it good?
I think it makes it worse. You know, I would definitely recommend that anybody go to, you know, Studio Press and buy Genesis. You know, they always run specials, but for the most part, it's like $599 a year, and you get unlimited updates, all the child themes, the parent theme, all this other stuff. And that's quite a bit of money for somebody starting a cat blog, you know. So they roll over to ThemeForest, and, you know, they're like, hey, this one's only $30, and they buy it, and now, you know, they're kind of stuck into this theme. They're kind of stuck into, you know, they only have X amount of dollars. I think that's where the problem is. This ThemeForest is, again, I don't know their marketing strategy, but, you know, like when you look at Woo themes, I don't think they have a $69 theme. I think Woo theme starts at 200 or up or something. When you look at themes that I would definitely recommend to people, yeah, they're a little higher in price, but they're good quality. And if you have everybody at WebDev and everybody at WP Engine and everybody at 10up saying use Genesis, why wouldn't you use Genesis instead of saving a couple bucks, you know? Like, so I definitely think that there's room to improve when it comes to cheap WordPress themes, or, you know, these themes that cost only $69. I think that whole thing could be improved. You know, I don't blame the user, but I do blame the user to a sense of learn what you're getting into before you get into it. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't hurt to ask a question. And I think when you ask a developer a question and they don't write back, you just solved your problem. You know, you're not going to get support even if you pay $89.99. So why would you pay $89.99 to get this theme? There's other solutions out there.
Good advice and good thoughts. So I totally agree with that, and I think that there is a sense of, you know, it's hard to put blame on the users, but everybody could use a little dose, I think, of reminding that if it looks too good to be true, then maybe it is at times. And if you're looking at a theme demo that is so amazing, that's better than all the sites of all your competitors in your industry, that just looks fantastic, and all you have to do is pay a few bucks and install it, and you have that site. You have the industry-leading site. Well, maybe question that a little.
Oh, yeah. Well, I definitely do think it comes down to naming as well. So you can turn any WordPress theme into a cupcake shop theme. You don't need to buy something called cupcake shop theme. You know what I mean? But I mean, it makes sense. You know, like, I'm looking for a pizza oven and this thing's called pizza oven. I probably should buy that, when, you know, you could turn this thing into a pizza oven. All I'm saying is, like, you can turn any Genesis Studio theme or Genesis Studio Press Genesis child theme into the next pizzeria or to the next soccer or to the next sailing theme, whatever. But I think WordPress has big words like custom post types and taxonomies, stuff like that. I think those could be renamed. You know, I think that they could just be presented in a different way. I don't think it's custom post types anymore. I think we should call them additional post types. I think that makes them less scary. But you could just say, here's this blog, and you can turn your blog right now using one additional post type, and you can turn it into a news site just like that. And I think when you introduce that into a new user's life, I think now they kind of see the eyes to, oh, this is just a sales technique called Cupcake Shop or called Construction Shop theme, and you don't need it just because it's called that. Because honestly, I could take the same theme and call it, like sock maker theme. And if I'm a sock maker, I can sell that to that person, or I can, I'm going to think I need the sock maker theme,
Right.
I think it's getting too specific, and I think people are trying to market to super niche things they don't need to be doing.
It's true. It's true. From the developer perspective, the word, I'm not a theme developer, but the word that I get from them is how it increases sales. This tactic is very effective, and a generic purpose theme does not sell.
Well, it's one of those things where it's like, the theme is using Visual Composer. You know what? We're going to break it down, okay? So Visual Composer is just a thing that you can drag and drop elements and turn them green and blue, whatever. It's amazing. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a great tool. But when you see a theme that says 200 different homepage layouts, technically every theme can have 200 page layouts because you're using a drag and drop editor. Like, it's not just because you're using that, it's because it is a drag and drop editor, So now Studio Press, they can make that same claim if they embedded, Visual Composer into their thing or whatever, but I've seen it to where it says, 18 different homepage layouts, and it's like, well, it's the same header, it's the same footer, and it's just like, it goes from 1/2 columns to 2/3 columns to 4/5 columns, and it's just drag and drop. Like, it doesn't really have 18 homepage templates, I think the closest I've ever seen to a theme having more than 2 or 3 demos is the Enfold theme by Creasy. He actually has 5 homepage templates in his theme, where the other one just has page.home.php, and then they're using Visual Composer to make it. So that's the closest I've ever seen to a theme actually having more than one homepage layout.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Do you think the WordPress ecosystem could benefit from a greater enforcement of standardization? Maybe from the top down somehow. I don't know what that would even look like. I mean, I went to a WordCamp years ago. I think it was my first WordCamp, and I didn't know anybody, but I gathered that this Matt Mullenweg guy who was speaking was pretty important. And so I stood up and asked a question like, something that had to do with standards. And he eloquently stated something about how you always have to walk this fine line. There's a balance between too strict on the standardization and stifling creativity, and also having things too wide open and having no consistency or just chaos for users. So where do you think that the barometer is for WordPress in terms of themes? Should it move in one direction or the other?
So when you talk about standards, I think what Matt was getting at was, if you start implementing strict rules, you might have a lot of developers leave WordPress. And I think that's the last thing he ever wants. If you start saying you have to do it this way or else, we're not going to allow it, then, you start losing that 25% market share rather quickly. I do think that everybody now should be escaping all their fields, or should be escaping, things like that. So I think in that sense, I think those kind of standards do need to exist. When it comes from a programmer side, you should be escaping, you should be sanitizing and validating all your data. You should be doing that. But in the sense of, a wrong way and a right way to get the PHP title from a blog post. I don't think that there needs to be a standard on that. I think it's okay, but I think that there should be clear documentation, like, hey, we're not getting PHP the title. We wrote our own function to do this, and just let people know what's up. I think it's lack of documentation is what it is. The WordPress Codex is amazing when it comes to documentation, and you should be doing it this way. But as we found out, there's always two ways to skin a cat. And, I'm all for doing things your own way, but I do think that when it comes to, setting up a theme, you probably should be following something that shows up number one in the search results, and that's definitely the Codex.
Yeah, I'm with you. So yeah, good stuff, and I like that. I like that point of view for sure. Tell me a little bit.
I spend a lot of nights thinking about that. Like, honestly, in no way do I think I'm going to solve the WordPress problems. Like, I'm not that guy. I don't even think Lemma is that guy. And I think a lot of people listen to Chris Lemma, who's phenomenal. But I spend a lot of time thinking about how can we teach, new users, or how can we teach developers to think a little bit differently. And, it took me 2 years to come up with the idea to rename it to additional post types instead of custom post types. Sure. So when I tell people that it's just an additional post type, they're like, oh, I didn't know you could add on to it. Because when you hear the word custom, you think it's crazy, or it's, it's so unique that it can only be done this way. But, I think the naming could have been done differently. But I spend a lot of time, Kyle, thinking about how can I make this easier for people to understand? Because I was there, you were there. I'm sure Mark at one point was even there. I'm sure Brad Williams from WebDev was there. Like, how do you do this? And it's like, well, that sounds scary, or that's the big word that we don't know. I think everybody could use a little kick in the butt when it comes to education or to, relearning skills. But I spend a lot of time thinking about how can we make it better.
That's awesome. Yeah. And some good observations too. Like, I don't think too much reflection on it is probably possible, because these are complicated problems to solve that, millions of people are impacted by, which is crazy, but even little things like the vocabulary we use, you brought up in a couple different ways, I think can be powerful. And generally when I have conversations with clients, just the term post is meaningless and lost on a lot of them. So I tend to refer to them as custom content types, or just content types.
Sure.
So we have conversations and initial consultations about what types of content are we presenting: testimonials, products, news, events, and so forth. And content types translates better to the standard vocabulary than post. Post is a term that we use all the time.
Right. If you're gonna try to sell a client, so if you're a developer and they want to add a new section, and so you're gonna build a custom post type, I was thinking about it, and I explained it to a client one time. I said, no, you need an additional post type, and they were like, oh, I get it. And I was like, that's a clever name for it, because you call it custom, but they're like, aren't they all custom? Like, they did a little bit of homework. But I think when you're actually trying to sell people on ideas and you have to reword it or re-explain it, we find easier ways to name things, or we find easier ways to communicate with each other. I think additional content type would be amazing. Let's get rid of post type altogether. Let's get rid of custom post type and call it additional content type. I love it.
Let's do it. We're going to make an administrative decision right here, right now.
I just registered additionalcontenttype.com, .net, .biz.
.us.
Yeah, .us.
.mobi.
.me. .vegas. All right. All the top level domains.
Good job. That was fast. All right. We're winding down here a little bit, and just got a few things to touch on before we wrap up here. Tell me a little bit about working at Vegas. What's going on there? What's special about working at Vegas, and what do you got planned for next year?
So WordCamp Vegas is very unique in the sense that We have an amazing building where we hold Las Vegas WordCamp. It's called the Innovation Center. So there's a company called Switch, and they host all like the World of Warcraft West Coast servers. Like they're literally right down the street from where I am right now. A lot of movie studios, all their like movie rendering servers, they all live in this place. So this guy has a ton of money, and so we pay. We pay like $300 for our space. That's it. That's all Vegas WordCamp costs. Normally, when you have a WordCamp, it's like $6,000, $7,000, something like that. You got to rent it from like a school or something. So they only charge us $300. Their Wi-Fi is solid. Like everybody could stream Netflix and Pandora and YouTube, and like their Wi-Fi would just laugh. Like that's really hard. You've been to WordCamps where like there's no Wi-Fi. And you're like, oh no, like I can't even send out an email, or like you have to tether your computer to your phone, and it's a nightmare. So we have all that great stuff, and it's all set up, and like I said, it's all rolled up in one package. But I think what's really cool is Vegas is kind of a destination just in general. It's a one place where everybody wants to go, or I think it'd be in their top 5 like destinations they want to attend to. So having a WordCamp here is great. Our only problem is the location. It's not downtown. It's not on this boulevard where all the hotels are. Other than that, Vegas is very close to LA. It's a 45-minute flight from Phoenix. It's like I think it's a 45-minute flight from Salt Lake. It's an hour from San Francisco. We have that potential to draw from all these major cities and get speakers and get people to come to our WordCamp. And I think that's what makes Vegas so unique. The hardest part about Las Vegas is I never know who's going to show up. I never know if we should bring more beginner talks. I never know if we should bring more advanced talks. Like that's one of the hard parts about planning a WordCamp is trying to please everybody. So last year what we did, and we're going to do that again this year, is that we didn't label anything. So normally, you'd have like Pippin Williamson, and he would be in an advanced talk about plugin development. And so you'd only have advanced plugin developers in his talk, right? Well, so what we did is we just said Pippin Williamson is going to be talking about this, and everybody showed up. And, so even though people weren't developers, they still got to learn something really, really cool. And that's another problem that I was trying to solve is how do we get beginners to go to advanced talks, and how do we get advanced people to go to beginner talks? Well, you take away the labels, nobody knows, and they just show up.
Fascinating.
It's one of those things that we did. We had an open discussion last year. I love Jetpack. How do you stand on Jetpack? Are you a fan? Are you not a fan? It's okay. It's all right. Be honest.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I have no problems with Jetpack. I use it on occasion. I wear the T-shirt often. Multiple Jetpack T-shirts in my wardrobe that I wear often. I'm good friends with some people on the Jetpack team. I think that they're fantastic people and awesome developers. And I think it does a lot of good for many users. I don't end up, at the end of the day, thinking about Jetpack very much.
Fair enough. Fair statement. Well, so every time, Kyle, I go to a WordCamp, I hear, don't install Jetpack or install Jetpack. And I've heard this at multiple WordCamps. So at Vegas last year, I got all of our sponsors, all of our speakers, and all of our attendees in one room. And I just said, why do you love Jetpack? And this guy goes, I hate Jetpack. And I said, okay, who loves Jetpack? And, this girl raises her hand. And so I brought them both up, and I just let them tell each other what their problems or what they loved about Jetpack. And, like, other people were invited to chime in. Like we had people from WP Engine raise their hand and be like, did you know Jetpack does this? And here's why we allow it. That's something that nobody got to know, It was another thing that we actually had an automatic developer in the room, and they were like, did you know that by using Jetpack, it offsets your server load time by, this much, because we do Photon and we do this and we do that. And it's one of those things that when you go to a meetup, people are like, oh, Jetpack sucks. but they don't tell you why it sucks. They just say Jetpack sucks. So
Right.
I got everybody together and I said, let's just be honest about how we feel about Jetpack. And it turned out that was one of the best WordCamp sessions I've ever done. Because I think people walked out of that knowing more about Jetpack than they ever had.
That's pretty powerful. It sounds like a good session and a great topic because there is a lot of confusion and misinformation, I think, about the plugin.
Yeah. Well, so the next conversation we're going to have is about plugins versus themes. Well, like, where does your code go? Plugin or a theme? It doesn't matter, but this is a huge discussion. So let's get everybody in the room together and just hear people's thoughts, That's where I'd go.
It's a good discussion. I did a presentation last year, plugins versus themes, me with Adam Silver, and it's a great showdown. But that's a classic discussion.
I did a talk in Minneapolis in 2015. It was actually called "Where Should Your Code Go?" And I told people don't stick them in plugin or themes. They can go anywhere you want. Just because it's called the plugin folder doesn't mean it has to go there. And people were like, really? I didn't know that. You know what I mean? Like, I just want to open people's eyes. That's all I want to do. Like,
yeah. Put it in WordPress core and WP load.
You just drop it into pluggable.php. Yeah. No, I just wanted people to understand that, yes, they're called themes and yes, they're called plugins, but bad code is bad code. And it doesn't matter if it's in a theme or if it's in a plugin. Bad code is bad code,
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Awesome advice.
You can't argue with that.
I won't even try. Before we go, we got just a couple more real quick questions for you. Tell me what's on your calendar for the rest of this year or early next year. Where might people bump into Russ?
Where might people bump into Russ? So WordCamp LA is coming up in September. I will be in WordCamp LA. So October is going to be a busy month. So October 1st and 2nd is WordCamp Phoenix. Then you have WordCamp Vegas, which is going to be October 8th and October 9th. And then you have, so I work for WebDev Studios, and we get all of our team together in one location. So from October 10th to October 14th, all the WebDev people will be in one city. And then I'm leaving WebDev Studios thing on October 14th, and I will fly to Ann Arbor to speak on the 15th. And then after that, the next weekend, I'm going to another WordCamp, which I'm not allowed to talk about yet, but it's going to be a big one. They haven't given us permission to announce it yet. But so the entire month of October, either Vegas, Phoenix, Ann Arbor, or if you happen to be in the Pennsylvania area, you can find me there.
All right. That sounds like a pretty exciting adventure, and I'm glad that our little event gets to play a part in it. I'm very excited about having you join us this year.
I'm very, very excited. Thank you for letting me be on the roundtable. I'm a big fan of anything WordPress podcast related. I've watched, I want to say, about 40 of the 100. What are we on now? 112, 120. You said
holy moly.
No, you said earlier. How many WP roundtables have there been?
112.
112, yeah. So I've probably watched about 40 of them.
That's
I need
crazy.
I need to watch more. Like I said, man, the only way you're going to learn WordPress is diving in and reading books or going to meetups or going to WordCamps. And I think podcasts like this are phenomenal.
Wow. Yeah. Well, that's really good. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that, Russ. And what an awesome thing for a great guest to say.
Yeah, listen up, future guests on the show.
Yeah. Flattery.
Suck up a little,
Yeah. Totally get you something. You'll find out.
I'll at least get you a high five. All right.
Yeah. Last couple questions for you.
All right.
Future episodes of this show. Who do you recommend I get on as a guest?
Ooh, who do you get on as a guest, huh? I think you get huge shout out to Michael Beckwith. So he's another maintainer. He also does a lot of the support for Pluginize and for WebDev Studios, and he really supports the entire company. Picking his brain would be incredible if you could do it. I don't know how to do it. So Michael Beckwith is number one. Number two, I think you get somebody. Who's it? So there's this girl here in Vegas. Her name is Kitty Lusby. KITTYLUSBY. So Kitty uses WordPress, but she's not a developer. She writes solid content. She's an SEO kind of person, but she stormed into the WordPress Vegas scene and like became alpha chick like quickly. Like she knows her stuff. She's really, really smart. And I think, picking her brain with how to start writing or how to be a better blogger, I think she's another great person. And then the third person, I don't know if you've had him on before. I haven't seen him, but Robert Gilmer here in Las Vegas. He helps co-organize WordCamp Vegas, and he might be taking over next year. We haven't had that discussion yet. But he won first place in Plugin Palooza in Orange County. He's a fabulous developer, and I think hearing him talk about, just the right way to do plugin development or the right way to do development, he could talk about that for hours. He always comes to the WordPress meetup prepared. He always brings like something that's super heavily advanced, but he makes it seem so beginner. He's phenomenal. I think you take those three.
Those are awesome recommendations. Yeah. Thank you, Russ. Before we go, is there anything else that you want to kind of share? Anything you want to pitch or just parting words that you want to leave with us?
I will definitely leave with parting words. When I first got into WordPress, I first started learning about themes. And so I found out that a theme, you can buy a theme, and it was called, Cupcake Theme. And I had a cupcake shop. I didn't really, but I had a specific niche, and there was a theme for that niche. And so what happened was I got suckered into, if I want to change my colors, I had to go buy, the orange version of the cupcake theme. Or if I changed them to pink, I had to go buy the pink version of the cupcake theme. What I recommend people do is, number one, learn how to make a backup first. So no matter what, if you break things, if you blow it up, if you crash a server, you can bring your site back to life. That's number one. So use something like Backup Buddy or BackWP Up, or find a host like WP Engine who, they'll do a backup for you. They'll leave the light on for you. It's great. I recommend learning backups. And then my second part is I recommend learning plugins. Because plugins are phenomenal products that solve problems. And once you have the right set of plugins, picking a theme is actually much easier. If you're picking plugins based on the theme you have, the number of plugins you can use starts to get really small. They start going down a funnel, But I think if you try to find a theme to work with your plugins, I think you're going to get a better quality theme out of it. So I recommend learning how backups work, then finding plugins to help you solve your problems, and then finding the cover, which would be your WordPress theme.
Great advice. Awesome parting words.
It's my advice. Take it or leave it.
I might just take it. Thanks for your time, Russ, this evening. It's been awesome. I really appreciate you stopping by the show and hanging out with me tonight. And just a matter of weeks, practically, before we are chilling in the same town together.
It seems like tomorrow, man. It's going to sneak up really, really quick.
Yeah. You're telling me. Oh, my gosh, I've got so much to do. We're putting together a pretty big event this year, and this is our third year in a row, and we are going a little bit bigger than before and getting pretty ambitious, but it's coming together.
I'll tell you what the key is. The key is lunch and coffee. As long as you have those two, everybody else will forgive you for everything else.
I'm taking notes. Okay. All right. Good stuff.
Right. Wow. Thank you. Any way I can help promote WPRoundtable.com, let me know.
Hey, I appreciate that. Yeah. How about like a better looking site would help promote it?
you know what? Maybe we'll find you a Genesis child theme. How about that?
Go. That's probably exactly the ticket.
Right on.
Awesome. Thanks for your time tonight, Russ.
Everybody have a good night. Or a good day if you're watching this in the day. I don't want to generalize, is all I get at. Have a good time.
Later.